everyone, it's Anne at Martin House Flowers. Welcome back to my channel. So today I'm in the kitchen. If you had seen some of my earlier videos where I was cleaning up the garden, I did clean up the tomato patch where I had an entire basket full of tomatoes, some green, half of them are green, half of them ripe with the red and the golden tomatoes. And I thought I'd share with you, while I remember, what seeds I used, and they were all from M.I. Gardner. And in terms of the fastest harvest in tomatoes that we were harvesting from and eating fresh tomatoes on a weekly basis, I grew a lot of gold medal tomatoes, and those are these ones here. These ones, this one here isn't exactly ripe, but they did ripen to almost an orange tomato. So that's the gold medal tomato, and I would it's an indeterminate tomato known for being one of the sweetest tomatoes on the market. And it's a bicolored wonder bursting with a tangy, sweet, fruity flavor. And they're delicious on sandwiches and so forth. So we love this tomato, and I will grow it again. I believe I still have a few seeds left. And I think I had mentioned before, I only planted about 6 plants and put them out there. And you saw in previous videos, I can drop in a picture of how many tomato plants, or how Jurassic everything got. So I was just talking to my neighbor earlier today, because I did bring them over a couple jars of the Salsa Verde that I made last night. So anyway, then I also grew some sweetie tomatoes, which are also indeterminate, and they're a bite-sized variety, sweet as candy, making it the perfect summer snack, according to M.I. Gardeners. And they were. And here's one of them. Fortunately, this one's cracked, but they're super sweet. You eat them right off the vine. These were the tomatoes that were overflowing on the raised bed, almost touching the ground. I had to cut them back multiple times. When I cleaned up the bed, I was able to harvest a lot of the green unripened tomatoes, and I used that in my salsa verde. So that's the sweetie tomato. And these larger red tomatoes that look a little bit like Roma tomatoes, these were the Napoli tomatoes, and it's a determinate tomato. And this Napoli tomato is a true gem among tomatoes. Deep red, plum-shaped tomatoes boast a rich and tangy flavor and make them ideal for creating flavorful sauces and purees. So the majority of the tomatoes I have here that are ripe that I'm going to use are these Napoli tomatoes. I don't know that I was thinking that far back that I was going to make sauce, but in any case, I will definitely be growing these, and I have quite a few left over. So I'll be growing these again if my sauce is successful. And just to qualify, I've never done canning until last night, but I have made a lot of sauces over the years, mostly just using either store-bought or fresh tomatoes. And it's always better if it's homemade. So I'm not going to get into too much of the perfect recipe, but basically how to make a tomato sauce that's super simple, leaving the skin on, not having to peel the skin, leaving the seeds in. And that's because I've always made sauce that way. And I think some people that remove the skin and seeds, it's because they have issues with digestion. Sometimes people have allergic reactions or digestive issues with skin and seeds and tomatoes, and we don't have that issue in the family. And honestly, I just want to make something as fast and simple as possible. So that's the Napoli tomato. But for today's purposes of sauce, the majority of the tomatoes are coming from the Napoli series and the gold medal tomatoes. I'm going to throw in a few of these sweeties because I have some here. And as I mentioned, I used a lot of green sweeties yesterday in my sauce. So if you're interested, I found this YouTuber that I think he posted his video a year ago that made this salsa verde recipe that was so easy. You simply boil the tomatoes, you clean them up, you take the core out, and actually you just basically remove the head off, clean that up if you want to. I didn't even quarter them or anything, just plop them into boiling water in a pot. But I boiled them for 3 minutes and then put them into a blender with cilantro, fresh cilantro, uh, oregano, garlic, and a lime per container, per blender container. And I simply use those 3 or 4 ingredients, your green tomatoes, different varieties of green tomatoes, your cilantro, big bunch of cilantro, a handful of cilantro, a couple cloves of garlic. I ran out of fresh garlic. I ended up using powdered garlic shamefully at the end. But oh, yes, jalapeno pepper from the garden. And in fact, these taller jars, I use these other spicy green peppers that I had in the freezer from last season, threw those in. So this is a spicier batch. And as a twist on some of them, I threw in an avocado per per blender container, and that made it a little creamier. So today when I walked Eddie and I went over to see the neighbors who look after our garden when we're gone, we were in Maine a couple weeks ago, I brought them over a jar of the creamy salsa verde with avocado and then one without. So that was, I can share the link on that. I didn't videotape it last night. Simply because the kitchen was a disaster. The kids were here. We were trying to get dinner on the table, and I was also, in the midst of experimenting with this canning for the first time. So today I thought I needed to clean up the rest of the tomatoes and the ripe ones, the red ones, and the gold tomatoes. So I'm going to go over what I'm doing with that today. I did research a couple of different methods, different recipes on YouTube, and I decided that there were a couple methods that were interesting. One was to boil your tomatoes for a minute or two, and then quarter them, and then put them into a roasting pan or a slow cooker, and you basically stew your tomatoes for up to 3 hours, and then take a soup puree to them or blend them. And I just thought that would just take too long for today. So I decided on the method where I'm going to quarter my tomatoes, roast them in the oven at 450 degrees, but preheat your oven at 450. Roast them. I have 2 stainless steel cookie sheets or pans here with parchment paper. I'm going to quarter my tomatoes, put them on there. You can season them if you want to with salt and pepper. Basically just roast them, and with the roasting method at 450, it caramelizes your tomato and sweetens them a little bit. And from that, after roasting them for about an hour and 15 minutes, you then throw those into a blender with all the spices you want, whether it be some fresh garlic, oregano, and parsley, any of the spices that you normally put into your sauce. I'm going to keep it quite simply just tomatoes, and I actually was going to put in a red onion as well for some sweetness and that little bit of sweet onion flavor, but I'm not going to add any other vegetables that I normally add in my sauce, because I can do that later when I go to open a jar and the base is already made for you, and then you can add your mushrooms, your zucchini, your carrots, or anything else you want. And the reason I'm not doing that now is because adding all those different vegetables will change the processing time for canning. So I thought I'd keep it as simple as possible. So yeah, let's just go ahead and do that. I did save some of these Napoli tomatoes that aren't quite ripe yet. They're still going to ripe, and so Greg's happy about that. So we still have some fresh tomatoes we can cut into for sandwiches or a side dish. So I'm just going to leave these on the counter to let them ripen, and we'll use up all of these. This is basically the batch that I have. I don't know how many pounds that is, but I have sterilized. I have 6 quart jars over there that I did sterilize. I washed them with hot soapy water and rinsed them well, and then put them in the oven at 275 degrees for 10 minutes, and that sterilizes your canning jars. And they're just sitting out cooling. They're ready to go once I've roasted the tomatoes and blended them. So yeah, just gonna go ahead and start. I think I'm also gonna roast the onions in nice big, I'm gonna take this onion and just cut a few chunks. And that way I can just add this onion to the blender. I could add a couple onions to this batch of tomatoes, but I think for now I'm just gonna do this amount because, as I mentioned, when I go to cook my sauce, heat it up, I can add however many other vegetables to the sauce that I want to. This sauce I'm going to use for a base for chili, for spaghetti, anything else. So I'm going to throw these in here with some quartered gold medal tomatoes. So I think I'm going to continue with the pan with gold tomatoes. There are all these fancy tools on the market that I don't have, it turns out, like a little tomato core. You can use it. I guess they're also like strawberry cores where you take, I just sliced off the top of this one already, so that you don't have to waste a lot of your tomato by using a paring knife. But yeah, I mean, if I get into this more seriously in the future, maybe I'll ask for some of these things in my Christmas list. So there are the two pans with my gold medal tomatoes and my Napoli tomatoes that I'm filling up. I'm going to preheat my oven now and pop these in when the oven is ready. So I'm going to preheat my oven at 450 degrees again. And let me wash my hands. I'm just continuing to fill the tray, just cutting these Napolis in half. There's such a clean tomato. There's nothing to remove in terms of a head or a little greenery on top. When you pluck that out, it's nice and clean. So it looks like I could do 3 trays, which I think I'm gonna go ahead and prep since I'm gonna have my oven ready. See how fast I can do this. I'm going to season them with some sea salt. I have some Himalayan pink salt or sea salt you can use, and just some black peppercorn. When I did my salsa verde, I seasoned everything with this Himalayan pink sea salt as well. Good workout. Check the oven. It's at 435. I've washed my blender, so we'll check back in another hour and 15 minutes, and then I'll show you as I plop the roasted tomatoes into the blender, and then we'll go from there. It's at 445. That's pretty good. 5 degrees. Not going to hurt it. I'm not going to be exact. You can put your oven, set your oven anywhere from 425 to 450. My oven runs a little bit cooler than some. I notice it takes a little longer when I bake. Usually add about 5 minutes to a recipe. So I went ahead at 450. It's going up to 450, and then I will roast them for about an hour and 15 minutes, maybe add 5 minutes to that. We'll see how that is. So I'm going to set the timer now. And we'll go from there. So my tomatoes have roasted in the oven for about an hour and 15 minutes or less. The tray on the top were getting really roasted, so I pulled those out a few minutes before the other two, but for the most part, an hour and 15 minutes roasted under 450 degrees temperature. And I'm now going to transfer them into the blender. And by doing this, a lot of the water from the tomatoes have evaporated. I let it cool after taking it out of the oven for about half an hour at least. It almost has the consistency of sun-dried tomatoes. Not quite, but a lot of the liquid is gone. So I think I'm going to do another couple of trays of tomatoes. But I can tell already that this is going to create a thicker sauce as compared to if I had boiled the tomatoes or put them in a slow cooker and let the water evaporate or cook out. I'm roasting a couple cloves of garlic on the stove here. Not nearly as many cloves as I'd like. I think I have 3 cloves there, but I like a lot of garlic. So I'm going to cheat because I didn't have a chance to run out today to buy more garlic, fresh garlic cloves. And the other garlic that I did have, I planted it on yesterday's video. So I'm going to supplement some of my fresh garlic. So those were the 2 pans of not Roma, but Napoli. How quickly she forgets. So I've got my roasted red onion in here as well. And these are the gold medal tomatoes that I'm throwing in now. The nice thing is these 3 pans will fill up. Check on my garlic over here. Oh, you can smell that. My oregano that I just used. Fresh oregano if you have it. If not, just season to your liking. I already put some salt and pepper on the tomatoes, but and I'm going to add my fresh garlic in a minute, but I'm adding some more granulated garlic, a bit of parsley flakes. So I've got my 3 cloves of garlic that I roasted just on a pan on the stove. Down some more tomato here. I ran out into the greenhouse to get some fresh garlic that's in a container out there. Rinsed it off. I'm going to throw in as many leaves. Did I say garlic? Fresh basil. In case it's getting late. As much basil as you would like. We like a lot of basil. If I had fresh oregano, definitely I would put in a couple sprigs of fresh oregano, but I just sprinkled a bunch of dried oregano. Whatever you have. I'm a firm believer in fresh herbs, really making your sauces, whether you're, want to make stuffing for Thanksgiving. I swear by fresh herbs. I grew up with my mom always using dried herbs, and when I discovered fresh herbs as a young adult, I realized there was just so much more flavor in fresh herbs. But obviously there's something to be said about drying your herbs so that you have it all season. So let's just put that in there, looking like a pesto. I'm going to put in the rest of the basil that I brought in from the greenhouse. Why not? That way it has a very strong basil flavor. And when I go to cook this sauce, all we have to do is add mushrooms. So it is a super thick sauce, as you can see. Wow. So I'm going to give it a taste test. See if I need to add anything. Wow, delicious, really good, really rich, delicious. I wouldn't even add anything else. My husband, on the other hand, likes things spicy. He likes to put sugar. I don't think I'm going to add sugar because the red onion, to me, gives it a sweet flavor. But there are recipes out there where people have added brown sugar. I don't know. Maybe I'll add a little bit. Let me know if you guys add brown sugar or sugar to your tomato sauce. But that's pretty much it. And I will put them in my canning jars over here. Let's see how far this takes us. I don't have any fancy funnels or anything like that. But I find just pouring it directly into the jar, you don't really need a funnel if you don't make too much of a mess. Wow, that made just one jar, roasting it out using roasted tomatoes. So I think it's because I used some smaller tomatoes today, but I'm gonna carry on and use up all the rest. And but wow, this is a beautiful jar of homemade Napoli tomato sauce. I'm going to call it Napoli tomato sauce. But anyway, thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to carry on here and make more sauce. And I'd really appreciate it if you let me know if this is the kind of video that you'd like to see going forward, if I want to share any other recipes. The second batch, I used more of the gold medal tomatoes, so it wasn't as thick as the first batch using Napoli tomatoes. So have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you at the next video. Bye-bye.